David wasn't the type to believe in curses. He was a single dad, practical, tired, focused on what was right in front of him. Since Claire's mother had passed 2 winters ago, his life had become a tight loop of work, laundry, and bedtime stories. So when he spotted the little wooden music box at the garage sale 2 streets over, it didn't occur to him to question why the woman selling it looked so relieved when he handed her a $5 bill. It was beautiful in a simple way, hand-carved, a little ballerina inside, her porcelain arms curved like a swan. The box itself was etched with flowers, roses and lilies, and along the edges ran a faint line of gold paint that had started to flake. The crank on the side was cold to the touch, even in the afternoon sun. Claire loved it immediately. "Can I wind it, Daddy?" she asked, clutching the box to her chest. "Of course," David said, forcing a smile. He hadn't seen her smile that wide in months. When they got home, she set the music box on her bedside table, wound it up, and watched the ballerina spin in slow, graceful circles. The melody was soft, a lilting tune he didn't recognize but couldn't quite get out of his head afterward. It played for exactly 45 seconds. Then the ballerina froze mid-turn, head tilted slightly, like it was listening to something. For the first 2 nights, nothing happened. Claire fell asleep to the melody each evening, and David went back to his nightly ritual of sitting alone on the couch with the TV turned down low. He was tired, the kind of tired that blurred the edges of the world. So when he woke one night at 2:43 a.m., to hear the faint tinkling tune echoing down the hallway, he assumed he'd forgotten to turn the crank all the way. He padded down the hall and pushed open Claire's door. The music box was spinning, but Claire was fast asleep. Her hands were under the blanket, her breathing steady. David frowned, crossed the room, and lifted the lid of the box. The ballerina spun faster for a second, as if startled, then slowed to a stop. He shut the lid. The room felt colder when the tune ceased. He told himself it was probably just some weird quirk, a leftover tension in the spring, or maybe he'd misremembered winding it before bed. Still, when he left the room, he locked the door behind him. Not for her protection, for his own. The second time it happened, it was different. He woke again in the small hours of the morning to the same tune, but this time, it wasn't floating down the hall like before. It was closer. He sat up in bed and realized the music wasn't coming from Claire's room. It was coming from the hallway itself. David's stomach went cold. He grabbed his phone, the light from the screen casting pale blue across the walls. He pushed open his door. The music was playing right outside, soft but sharp, like icicles clinking together. The music box sat neatly in the center of the hallway floor. David's heart thudded against his ribs. He forced a laugh. It came out thin and wrong. "Claire," he whispered. No answer. He reached down, picked up the box, and opened it. The ballerina twirled, her porcelain smile faint in the blue light. Her head turned ever so slightly toward him, as though acknowledging his touch. He snapped the lid shut, shoved it back into Claire's room, and locked the door again. He started keeping his phone's camera ready after that. The third night, when the music began, he didn't get up immediately. He turned on the camera, stepped quietly into the hallway, and held up the phone. The image on the screen made him stop breathing. The hallway itself looked empty to his naked eye. But through the phone's camera, just faintly at first, he saw something crouched beside the box. It wasn't Claire. The thing was hunched low to the floor, spindly arms reaching delicately toward the music box as if it were a fragile gift. It had the long, jointed limbs of something that had forgotten how to be human, and its skin was the color of ash. Its head tilted with a jerky, unnatural precision, like a bird studying prey. And it was smiling. The music box kept playing as it turned its eyeless face toward him through the lens. David nearly dropped the phone. When he tore his eyes away from the screen to look at the hallway directly, there was nothing there. Just the box, its ballerina spinning in perfect circles. The next morning, David tried to convince himself it had been a nightmare, a trick of the light, sleep deprivation, grief, anything rational. But when he checked the camera roll, the footage was there. Grainy, shaky, but unmistakable. That thing had been real. He tried to take the box away. While Claire was at school, he carried it outside to the trash bin. But the moment he touched the lid, a thin line of cold shot through his arm, straight to the back of his neck. He threw it into the bin anyway and slammed the lid. That night, at 3:12 a.m., the music started again. He bolted upright, rushed into Claire's room, and there it was, on the bedside table, right where it had always been. And this time Claire was sitting up in bed. She wasn't asleep. She was humming along to the melody. Things began to unravel fast after that. Claire grew pale, like the color had been drained out of her little by little. She complained of headaches, of whispers in the corners of her room. She said the ballerina told her secrets. "Daddy," she whispered one night, her voice small and hoarse. "She says she wants to dance with me." David's stomach twisted. "She's not real, honey," he said carefully. "She is," Claire replied, smiling too wide. "She's been here longer than we have." David tried everything. He threw the box into a river. He smashed it with a hammer. But every morning it was back on the nightstand, pristine, untouched, playing that same endless lilting tune. He considered calling someone, anyone, but how do you explain that your daughter's toy is haunted by a thing you can only see through a camera? One night, desperate, he held up his phone again as the music played. The creature was clearer this time, standing tall beside Claire's bed. It loomed over her, its head bent low, its grin stretched to impossible lengths. One bony hand hovered above her chest as if tracing something just beneath the surface of her skin. David shouted her name. The thing snapped its head toward the camera again. It moved fast in a blur of shadow and limbs until the screen filled with its face. The footage cut to black. The final night came quietly, too quietly. David awoke to silence, not the music, just silence. His heart hammered as he got out of bed and walked to Claire's room. The door was open. The music box sat on the floor in the center of the room. The ballerina wasn't spinning. Claire stood in the corner, her face turned toward the wall. "Claire," David whispered, his voice cracking. She didn't move. He stepped closer. The air felt wrong, thick, like the whole room was holding its breath. "Sweetheart?" Slowly she turned. Her eyes were dark, completely black, no whites, no light, just a void staring back at him. Then she smiled. The music began to play. Flames started in the kitchen. He didn't see how. One moment the house was quiet. The next, smoke rolled along the ceiling like storm clouds. David grabbed Claire's arm. "We have to get out," he coughed, but she didn't budge. She only tilted her head and whispered in a voice that wasn't hers, "She wants you to stay." The music grew louder, not from the box anymore. It came from the walls, from the floors, from the air itself. David tried to pull her, but her small hand burned against his. She was too hot, too strong. He stumbled backward as she stepped through the doorway, calm and silent, clutching the music box. The fire spread with impossible speed. It curled up the walls like eager fingers. Smoke clawed at his lungs. He crawled toward the door, but it slammed shut. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands, turned the camera toward the flames. The entity was there, standing over him. It towered in the smoke, its limbs bent and broken like a marionette. The grin was wider now, stretching from ear to ear, and its hands cradled the air around him like a gift it was about to unwrap. Behind it, Claire walked out the front door. The flames didn't touch her. The last thing David saw before the world went black was his daughter on the lawn. She didn't look back at the burning house. She just stood beneath the streetlight, barefoot, holding the music box in her hands. The ballerina spun faster than it ever had before. And through the flicker of the flames, David could swear he saw something else turning with it. Long fingers, a too-wide smile, and a shadow taller than the night itself. No one ever found a body inside the house. The fire burned too hot, too fast, leaving behind only the warped frame of what once was a home. They said the little girl was in shock. She didn't speak. She just clutched a small wooden music box. When the authorities tried to take it, she bit them. At night, in the shelter where they kept her, they said you could hear the melody playing faintly down the halls. though the box itself never moved. And sometimes on the security cameras something else appeared. A shape, crouched low, smiling.